You've already been introduced to me, but a few people on here probably already know me, and a few people here probably don't. But one thing you probably all have in your head is, that's a white guy. What is he doing writing about a Chinese woman? And it's an excellent question. And it's a question that I will get into in a little more detail later on when Xiaochen and I have our conversation. But just to maybe put you a little bit at ease, I was very fascinated by the story of Ah Toy, who is a historical figure. And I thought, this is a story that needs to be told. Now, does that mean that I am allowed to tell it because I'm not a Chinese person? I'm not sure. But I didn't see too many other stories about her, so I thought, let's just put the story out there, and I hope that I don't get any blowback from this. But I can also tell you that I've spent more years than maybe I care to admit working on this project. Ron very nicely said 10. It's actually closer to 12. With research, writing, and rewriting, and making sure that I got her correct. So I'm hoping that that at least gives me a little bit of grace in terms of am I allowed to write her story. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. What I do want to at least ask, and I don't know if anyone wants to shout out or something, is does anyone know who she was? This woman, Ah Toy, who was a real historical figure in San Francisco? Anyone have any clue at all? Or like rushed through the book so quickly in order to be here tonight and now you know? Or guesses? I thought I saw a hand. Yeah?
I mean, I've read articles about her, but
Do you have like a basic idea of who she was or
yeah.
when she was or
Right. A long time ago, she was a
a
madame.
long time ago and a madame? Yes.
I want to say this is like even before the Chinese Exclusion Act, and like there weren't a lot of Chinese women in San Francisco.
All of that
All of
is
San Francisco.
all of that is correct. Absolutely. Nice job. Yeah, she was way before the Chinese Exclusion Act. This is at the start of the gold rush in 1849. And she was the first Chinese brothel madam in San Francisco during that time. I'm going to try to move around if I can, but I don't know if I'm that able to. So let's see what I can do. So yes, thank you. That is who she was. And what I'm planning to do right now is kind of do a little bit of a mix between some biographical information about her, a couple of short readings from the book, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of a fuller picture. And then later on, Xiaochun's going to interview me, hopefully kindly, and not put me too much to the screws, but more about the writing process itself and how I kind of formulate the characters. Okay, so the question I want to ask you as I go through this is, like most historical figures, not everyone is completely all good, and not everyone is completely all bad. We're complicated. So the question to you is, I don't know how many people can see, but is she a villain? Or is she a hero? Or is she kind of somewhere in between? Maybe like a Vero or a Helen? Okay. This is up to you to decide, but I'm just going to present you some facts. Okay. First of all, what did she look like? That's kind of important, especially being in the prostitution industry. You'll notice that there's no face of her that we have. We don't know what she looked like, but we do have some descriptions from men at the time. So let's see if we can go through some of those. It's just a couple of quick ones. First one from our journalist. She was a very handsome Chinese girl. Okay. The newspaper, which she was in a lot, called her blooming with youth, beauty, and rouge. Another traveler said, the strangely alluring Ah Toy, with her slender body and laughing eyes. And one more from Charles Duane, a tall, well-built woman. In fact, she was the finest looking woman I have ever seen.
Yeah.
So she looked all right. Now, she was born 1829 or so. This is a map of China. She was born in Canton, which is right there, circled for you. About 1829, and then 20 years later, she's still very young, but about 20 years later, we think she was married and made the trip across the Pacific Ocean, starting in Canton, made a little stop in Hawaii, take on fresh supplies, and then San Francisco. Now, this was a trip that took 45 to 60 days or so on a clipper ship. Now, this husband she was supposedly married to did not make it. He got on the ship and he left the ship in a body bag. We don't know how, we don't know why, but he did not make the trip. So then she had a question to answer. Do I stay in San Francisco or do I pack it up and return home? She did not want to go home. And for that reason, in fact, we have a little, let me give you a little newspaper article here. This is clipped from the Daily Alta, California. This is from a court case, of which she was in many. And she, sorry if my post is blocking you, that's all right. In one testimony, it said that she immigrated to this country for the purpose of bettering her condition, and that she is anxious to make California her permanent home and not to return to China. So she chose to stay put in San Francisco, which is kind of unusual because women, first of all, didn't make that trip for the most part. And if they did, it would be with a husband. Certainly seeing a woman on her own trying to make it in a different world, which San Francisco was quite unusual. And she was determined to make the most of it, however. So she arrives in San Francisco 1849. She's about 20 years old. And here's what San Francisco was like at that time. This is a drawing, but it's, somewhat depicts what you see here. I don't know if I'll get out of people's way. I'm sort of in the way here. All right. Maybe I'll just stand like this. Is that all right? Okay. So it was basically a harbor with some wooden buildings, a bunch of canvas tents. It was kind of haphazard because all people were there for was gold, or to sell tools to the miners who were going for gold. And there really wasn't any sense of, oh, this is going to be a permanent place for me. We're just going to go there, land. We'll all strike it rich because, that's how it happens. And then we'll get out of here. And everyone from around the world came from Chile, Mexico, Europe, and China. And the United States, which, by the way, California was not part of the U.S. back then. So you were still considered an immigrant if you were from the U.S. All right. So here's San Francisco. You can see that there's a lot of dirt. Oh, these are mounds of sand. San Francisco was built by sand dunes. It actually made 0 sense to have a city here because of the shifting sands. Benicia actually was considered a much better place. They didn't quite win out, as we can say now. But because of this beautiful harbor that was protected from the ocean, that's really what made people want to stay and live there. People were there before, Native Americans, of course, but also a few little groups here and there. It was called Yerba Buena at the time. Then it got changed in about 1848 to San Francisco. Okay. Lots of people came from around the world. This illustration pretty much captures it. You have, you have your Latin Americans here. You got your white guys here. You got your Chinese guys here.
Yeah.
You got your drunk guy here.
Yeah.
And you have your 2 dogs here. Okay, this was a very diverse place. All walks of life showed up to San Francisco to get their fortune. All right, so what did Atoy do to get her fortune? She started in a little canvas tent on Clay Street at Portsmouth Square with a peep show. So where was that exactly? Right here. Here's Portsmouth Square here. Here's the bay. By the way, for geography buffs in the room, you'll notice that this is the old original coastline of San Francisco. It actually, I don't know if you can see that so clearly, but it goes up to Montgomery Street. Montgomery Street used to be right where the water came up to it. Then because of landfill and land speculation and all that, all this got filled in. Anyway, so here's Portsmouth Square, still there, but this is really the center of the town at that point. Everyone gathered there, and so did the Chinese. And actually, this is one of the very few Chinatowns today that's not on the edge of a city, which you'll see in a lot of other major cities. It's actually kind of in the middle of a city, which is kind of unusual. But it's because everyone is flocking to this area. Okay, so Atoy starts a peep show. One more picture, sorry, of Portsmouth Square. This is an actual photograph, which is kind of rare. Telegraph Hill up here in the background, very few houses. And there's this big dirt expanse. When it rained, that got interesting. Mud up to your knees. Okay, here we go. This is not her. Don't get excited. Sorry, I would have loved it if it were. However, no, this is actually Jaden Wong. She's a 1940s Broadway dancer. But I chose this picture just to give you a little bit of a visual, maybe of how her peep shows would have worked. Just the pose I thought really captured it. Anyway, so she starts a peep show, and she would have like a little cloth partition in her tent with little holes, and she charged 1 ounce of gold per peep. And at the time, that was $16 an ounce, which in today's dollars is about $670.
Wow.
So, and not only that, there was a line around the block, and every now and then someone would have to get the pistols out and wave it around to make sure the men would get back in line. So she very quickly made her riches and then decided, you know, I can do more with this. So she opened a brothel, which is much more lucrative. All right, so this brothel was located on Pike Street, which is now Waverly Place, if you know your San Francisco geography. Again, this is not her. We don't have any images of her, but this is kind of roughly what I think her house would have looked like. It was 2 stories. It probably was festooned in red drapery, velvet couches, that kind of thing. She started with 2 girls. We don't know how they got here. We don't know where they came from, except somewhere in China. But there is a census that they took in 1852, and it lists these 2 women. Turns out that they were quite popular. And why do you think they were popular? Any just like random guesses? Sorry, I used to be a teacher, so I'm sorry if I go to the crowd. I'm not trying to like check for understanding. I just want to, you know, in case you were like begging to be included.
The baddies. It's narcissism. Yeah.
Uninhibited.
There's a lot of inhibition. That's true.
And no other women.
Uninhibition, is that how you say it? Okay. Very few women, yes. Actually, it turns out that San Francisco was about 90% plus male. And if you think about it, those were the people that were generally coming to San Francisco to dig for the gold. So they'd stop in San Francisco, go off to the foothills. But in San Francisco is sort of like their way station, their checkpoint. And it was usually these young men, very few women, and if you do the math correctly, which I didn't teach math, but if you do the math correctly, that equals a lot of popularity, especially if there are women. Okay. So, because of her popularity, she starts to get the attention of a few neighborhood baddies. Two of them, Norman Ah-Sing, who is a character in this book. A second one that I didn't include in the book, but he was also a pretty mean guy named Yi Ah-Tai. And when you kind of proclaim yourself, like the mayor of Chinatown, or Little China as it was called at that point, you start to see, who's a success around here and who can I extort for funds? And so these two gentlemen went after prostitutes and brothel madams to say, hey, it'd be a shame if anything happened to that house of yours, seeing how it's illegal and all. But for the low payment of however many dollars or how many bags of gold dust, we can make sure that nothing happens and that you get to operate as continue operating as normal. Most people said, okay, I'll take that. She said, why would I do that? That's taking money away from my business. So she actually said, nope, I am not going to do that. And even though she rebuffed those guys, she still had to deal with some of the consequences of that. And so a lot of times, if you look through the newspapers of that time, and I've done that often, is you'll see that Ah-Tai frequently is cited for running a disorderly house, throwing trash into the yard, making loud noises at night, like all these things that a lot of brothel houses were kind of getting away with, but because she was kind of the thorn in the side of some of these powerful people, she was always getting hauled into court for some reason or another. But she dealt with it, and she said, all right, you'll take me to court? I'll go to court, and I'll tell you exactly as it is. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to share with you some of the few times that I could find that she was actually in court. This is the courthouse. Let me move around here so give other people a chance to see. This is the courthouse in Portsmouth Square. And I'm going to list for you all the times that she was in court that I could tell. Okay, this was when someone decided to pay with brass instead of gold at her peep show. And she said, that doesn't look right. Hauled him into court. She did lose, unfortunately. But she kept trying again with every time people tried to pull one over on her. Next, she was called a public nuisance, went to court. Oh, this one's a good one. Okay, so she got a letter that claimed that she had a husband in Hong Kong. And boy, I would really love to have her back home. Could you send her back home? Turns out that was probably a fake. And we think it was one of those guys that she refused to pay extortion money to. Okay, then she was cited for having a disorderly house in 1851 November. Later that month, this is one of my favorite ones. Someone went in and stole one of her jeweled pins. But I'm going to show you the newspaper article from that because this will really give you an example of what kind of personality you're dealing with. Okay, I'll go quickly. Okay, last evening about 8 o'clock, that portion of the city in the vicinity of the plaza was aroused by a certain nondescript noise, which on further investigation was found to be a series of musical screechings performed by Miss Ah-Tai and resembling somewhat a prolonged cry, interspersed with the clatterings of a gong or other similar instrument with which religious rites are performed in the Celestial Empire. When we arrived near the spot whence the outcry was proceeding, we found her in full chase after a suspicious-looking individual who had the appearance of being a volunteer to the Indian War. The thief kept ahead for a time, but Atoy was too swift for him, seized him by the collar very much in the style of a police officer, and demanded a diamond pin, which he and his party had taken away from her after politely visiting her house and taking a drink with her. Okay. I actually used this description going back to maybe how she appeared. A lot of times in that time period, women had their feet bound. And so some accounts say that she did have her feet bound. Some didn't mention it really much at all. But the fact that she's in full chase after this guy and then like grabs him by the collar, I'm kind of thinking she didn't. Plus, she was from the southern part of China, which was a little less common. But I just love the image of her like grabbing a guy and saying, "Hand it back over." Well, it doesn't end there. She actually takes this guy to court. She becomes a very, very common face in the courtroom. Okay, so here's the story of her. A few days later, here's the article. Now, before I get into this, I have to say, you'll notice that the words that she uses, when I was doing my research, a lot of the times whenever the newspaper articles would quote a Chinese person, it was in pidgin English. And I was very uncomfortable with that because that's kind of what I'm used to saying is like, oh, that's kind of a racist way to characterize someone speaking. Well, then I did a little more research and learned that actually it did sound like this, because at the time you had the European merchants meeting up with Chinese merchants in Hong Kong and not knowing how to communicate. And so they created this mixed pidgin language. It was kind of a mixture of English, but in a Chinese like sentence structure. And so in that way, they were able to communicate a little bit. So hopefully you won't get too mad at me as I read this story. It was decided that the Chinese, okay, so they're in court and there's an interpreter, but this interpreter is shown to maybe not know so much English. Okay. Miss Atoy appeared to be highly incensed at this conclusion that they wanted to get another interpreter. And making a general onslaught upon the court, counsel, prisoner, and all, said in her peculiarly musical voice, "You likey thief man? You likey stealy you pin? You very bad man. That man stealy my pin. He ought be hang." She's yelling at the defense lawyer at this point. Miss Atoy's voice rose to so high a pitch that even the clerk, who is usually very cool under such circumstances, was considerably frightened and looked very much alarmed over the top of his spectacles. The court took a recess and sent for the interpreter, during which time Miss Atoy opened all her artillery upon Colonel James, counsel for the prisoner. "You know tiki dat man teefy 'cause he give you some money?" said she, and then enlarged upon the corruption in the legal profession generally. The colonel, being naturally a good-natured man, took it all very easily, which was good. But she didn't really let anyone get to her, and I appreciate that she was able to, I mean, if you think about this, just for a second, a Chinese immigrant who had a little bit of a grasp on the English language is using a white person's court system, trying to get some justice for herself, and when she feels like she's not getting it, she doesn't shrink back. In fact, she unloads all the insults she can find in her arsenal on this guy. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why I thought this was a cool story to tell. All right, I'm going to move right along here to, I'm going to go quickly here. She's also in court for a beating that she sustained from a guy named John Clark. She went after him in court. She defended a woman who beat up her own man. It keeps going. Okay, so there's an extortion case she's in court for. Both of these guys, she was trying to defend against. Oh, another disorderly house, disturbing the peace, prostitution in general. This is a good one. Okay. Knocking on windows. Okay. This was, I'm going to get to this soon, but this was more when she was, it was more of like the decline of her business at that point. So she was likely in a lower class house at that point. And a lot of times if someone walked down the alley, you'd hear trying to get the attention of the men, like, hey, come in here. We got a woman for you. So they got her for knocking on windows. Her own windows, yeah. Okay. At some point, we know that she goes back to China because she realized at the height of her popularity that she needed more women to meet demand. So, where is she going to get those women? Well, she gets back on her ship, back across the Pacific, back to Canton. And this is where we start to say, I don't know, the morality is a little bit dubious here with how she makes her money, as if maybe prostitution wasn't quite there yet. In China at that time, there were a few things going on. There was a lot of natural disasters, floods especially. There were also just a few years prior, Hong Kong had been ceded to the British because of the Opium War. And then the third thing was a rebellion called the Taiping Rebellion. And all these things combined were creating an atmosphere of famine and poverty. This picture, there's Hong Kong at the time. This picture is couple decades later than when she went, but it still shows the poverty that you would have found there. And a lot of times, especially the farmers would have a lot of children to work the farms, but not much food to feed the kids. And as we know that unfortunately a lot of families favored the boys over the girls would sometimes be sold off to people with money to serve as servants or prostitutes in brothel houses. Atoy took advantage of this. And I want to do a little reading now from the book that gets into the back and forth of is there a silver lining to this, or is this just a completely evil thing? So, Xiao Chen's going to help me out. He will play the voice of Atoy. I will play the voice of Cyrus, who is the main character in this story. And Cyrus, at this point in the book, is 17-ish years old. He is working in the brothel with her. They go to China. They go to these different villages. She buys girls to bring back to San Francisco. And they are currently in this scene on the ship back home. And I think it's just starting to hit him now what they're truly doing. Okay. Seeing them here like this, on this ship back to San Francisco, I experienced a gut feeling for the first time that this was wrong, all wrong. The girls devoured the bread. I shook my head as my ears began to ring.
What?
Atoy said. Actually, I'm going to bring my microphone over.
Okay.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Crazy?
All of it. The girls, the sneaking, the disguises, the bribery, the trickery, all of it. Everything you did.
I do?
I couldn't see Atoy's eyes narrow, but they froze me, like iced water dripping into my shirt. But I didn't care. Yes, you took 6 girls away from their families.
They give me all the girl.
You tricked them. You made them think I was a missionary.
To save their face. They know what they do.
That doesn't make it right. These are humans. They're children.
I know they are children.
Atoy's voice was getting louder.
You know why we go to China.
A lantern rose and moved closer, and suddenly Atoy's face was inches from my own.
You know what of China?
She said, voice calm and deadly. I didn't answer.
Huh? You know what?
A fair amount, I slurred. I've just been there.
China, very poor country in the whole world. England, your ancestor, huh? Bring opium. Men got drug, poison, on the spell, cannot work. You believe it? The men job to feed the family. Very much shame if not feed. But he poison and cannot do it. Think the mother with children and parents, all living on the men. He come home, bring no food, will not come home any time.
I couldn't follow her. The ache spread across my face.
Emperor, he stopped the opium. England start the war, but China too weak. England take Hong Kong, and now people not eat. You see hungry person? They do everything for food. Kill elders' pig, eat bark from the tree. My mother take brick, make into dust and cook bread. She give to my brother first because he is the boy.
She paused and took a breath.
I go live at flower boats. Finally enough to eat.
I couldn't help myself. Flower boat?
Parent cannot feed the child, cannot feed own self. Now a war, everyone very hungry. Who feed the child?
I couldn't answer.
You want child too hungry?
I didn't answer that either. What about the missions?
Full, too small number.
An orphanage, then.
Too many child, no food. You understand? No food.
Atoy moved her face closer.
We work business. You don't like, but everyone win. The family eats, we get the money, all the girl live.
She reached into her dress and pulled out a small sack, the same that contained the coins I'd just sweated earlier, and tossed it at me. It landed next to me with a clinking crunch.
No more debt. You will pay. Let's first pay 2%. Don't like the work? Take and go. No more work. Like the money? Want more? Do more work. Stop your complaint.
A silence fell between us. It stretched the length and depth of the boat, up to the deck and to the sky above, and through the hull to the ocean's floor itself. I was suspended in it, unable to respond. What was right and what was wrong had taken on the fuzzy quality of fog, and I floated, unmoored in space. I closed my eyes and sensed the weight of the darkness pressing on me. Here they were, eating and drinking, hidden away from the crew, another mile closer to servitude and debasement. And I'd played my part. On my left side was darkness, on my right, a void. Something stung at the corner of my eye. I blinked quickly and it passed. Atoy stood up.
Up now, 2 more crates.
But before she turned away, she said,
You call me crazy again. You not go home.
Thank you. I wanted to show you also, this is a picture taken of kidnapped children in 1904, I believe. Just to put a face to the kids that were taken away from their families either through purchase or through kidnapping, to show that, hey, these were real people and they'd often got tricked into prostitution contracts and servitude contracts. So her brothel business didn't really make it out of the 1850s, mostly because this is when the Tongs, or these secret societies from China, really started to infiltrate San Francisco. And with them, they decided to get into the prostitution business themselves. And so they brought tons and tons of women over from China. And I guess you could say Atoy was like your mom and pop brothel madam. These guys were like the industry. So she was driven out. She couldn't compete. And there are a few newspaper articles. I'm going to show you one of them that shows really that she's starting to lose her business and to fall more into poverty. So this was in 1855. It's hard to see, but it says, Miss Atoy, well known to all who have visited San Francisco, recently endeavored to commit suicide by swallowing a large quantity of opium. Dr. Gibbons was called in and soon compelled her to throw up the poison. It is said that Atoy, though formerly wealthy, is now very poor, and expressed herself that she has no desire to live in poverty. So this is only a few years after she starts her house. So she manages to hold on a few more years in San Francisco. Then we think that she went back to China for a couple years. Then after that comes back to California, probably because China wasn't really any better itself. Not many more opportunities for her there either. She ends up in Alviso, and we only really know that in the South Bay because of her obituary, which shows up almost 70 years later in 1928, which, if you do the math, she was about 99 years old and managed to live that almost a complete century in a time when healthcare wasn't probably the best, but also in the rough and tumble world of San Francisco, in an industry that was also kind of rough and tumble. We know a few things about her in that 70-year gap just based on this. So for instance, she's not running a house anymore. Instead, she is, where is it? She is selling clams to tourists and yachting parties in order to make a living. So she's fallen a little bit financially, but she's still kind of making it work. And it turns out she leaves a number of children in China. Where did that come from? Well, I don't know. But there was a 70-year gap, which is a lifetime for people. So who she met, how many children she had, are they floating around China or here, or who are the descendants? I have never been able to find out. If anyone knows anyone and has a lead, I will be here after this talk. That would be awesome. But I thought it was kind of cool in a way that, I was born and raised in San Jose, so to see San Jose on here, turns out I was able to find, actually the cemetery that she is in is actually not too far from where I grew up. So I was able to track down the plot map, and she is right there. Wow. The only problem is nothing is marked on the actual grass. So here's the Chinese Historic Cemetery portion of Oak Hill Cemetery in San Jose. I went there all excited with my camera. It's like, okay, I'm gonna find her. Like, what a great way to conclude this story. I saw this. So nothing is marked. So I kind of like tried to measure it off by stepping, okay, I think she might be here. So she is somewhere here and very possibly off screen, but somewhere kind of here is where I think she might be. And when I think about the 70 years that she lived through after her job in San Francisco, it's pretty amazing to think about what the world was like and the changes that it went through. So for instance, she lived through the Civil War. She lived through the Chinese Exclusion Act that you mentioned a little bit ago. She lived through industrialization and the steam engine and trains and all that. She lived through the 1906 earthquake and she may have even been in the Bay Area for that. She lived through the invention of the automobile, and she lived through World War I. So I think just out of sheer determination to live that long, she kind of gets my vote. So that kind of wraps things up, and I wanted to again bring this back to the question of, do you think she would have been a good villain in a movie? Do you think she would have been a good hero in the movie, or somewhere in between? I tried to give you some balanced information about who she was, so that's up to you. And I want to thank you very much for making the trip out here on a random Wednesday in the middle of Christmas season. And someone even is out here on their birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
You don't want to hear me sing, so I won't. But thank you very much for making it part of your birthday, and for everyone for making it out here to support me or to support Xiao Chen as he gets to lead me in an interview next, and everyone who helped put this together. Thank you very much.